the governing party says that they are in coalition talks with opposition parties, including the Economic Freedom Fighters. The governing party has also outlined issues that they will implement, and this is following their performance earlier this month in the local government elections. So to get more of a response in terms of what is exactly happening on the ground, especially following the African National Congress NEC meeting, we've got in studio with us independent political analyst Ralph Mathegka. Of course, we invite you as always to be part of our conversation this morning. Simply leave your comments on our Facebook as well as on our Twitter pages, and let's keep the conversation going. Ralph, thanks a lot for joining us this morning.
Thanks for inviting me.
Now, the press release was obviously issued following the lekgotla that was held by the NEC, saying that there's a need to take collective responsibility for what happened. What do you deduce from that press release?
Well, I think that the party is trying to maintain a strong face in the public eye so that at least the repercussions for the poor performance of this local government is not being seen or is not allowed to cause further divisions within the party. I mean, the reason why you have a leader of the party is that that person should be expected to take a party towards a particular direction. And if you always emphasize collective responsibility, you're actually saying that under no circumstances should the leader of the party take responsibility for that. Yeah. So I think that the ANC here, they are looking as to what would be the gain of turning against their president now. And I think in terms of substance, there is nothing. Even if they were to fire President Jacob Zuma tomorrow, the election result remains the same. There is nothing they are going to gain immediately if they take action against their president. They want to maintain that solid front. Probably the game now is looking to 2017 elective conference of the ANC. They want to get there probably more stable, and they realize if they are more divided now, if they fire their president, they might not get there stable.
Well, of course, lots to unpack as a result of that. Looking forward to the 2017 elective conference of the African National Congress, but also let's hear what the Secretary General of the African National Congress had to say yesterday following the actual lekgotla of the ANC.
The NEC noted that our poor performance in the 2016 local government elections is a serious setback to the cause of social transformation. The NEC unanimously agreed to take collective responsibility for the poor performance of the ANC during the election and resolved to take immediate and bold actions to address the weaknesses and shortcomings that led to the decline of our election support. The NEC believes that we were convinced that the ANC remains the hope of the vast majority of South Africans, black and white, particularly those who are still trapped in poverty and other social ills inherited from the apartheid colonialism.
While one can see that a very adamant Secretary General Mantashe there following the actual lekgotla held by the ANC. Now, obviously, we look at the sentiments. It almost appears as though 2017 is the goal here, and therefore one must ask then, if 2017 is the aim to show a united front for 2017, does that not give more fodder to the opposition parties such as the EFF as well as the Democratic Alliance to make leeway, especially when it comes to implementing some of the promises during the local government elections?
Well, certainly the opposition have begun to contest the legitimacy of the ANC to actually be trusted with the mandate to implement those issues, service delivery. And I think the voters have also spoken where in certain areas where we are sitting in Johannesburg, the voters have said to the ANC that, wait a minute, we are not going to give you an outright majority to govern. And the opposition parties are not going to fold their hands and wait for the ANC to self-correct, as people say the ANC will self-correct. The opposition party have tasted something that could be lying ahead for them, and I think that they're going to try to make inroads. They're going to hold on to the electoral support that they have, while the ANC is busy denying the extent to which they are in trouble and denying, dilly-dallying about what needs to be fixed.
Let's speak a little bit about this denialism that you're saying that is happening. Obviously, it appears as though an internal report was actually submitted to the top 6 in, was it last year, May? Speaking about exactly, where the ANC support lies, and obviously one key point was Nelson Mandela Bay, speaking speaking about Danny Jordan as well as his leadership thereof, saying that people don't necessarily trust him, especially in some of the coloured areas as well. That internal report was prevented from being seen by other members of the African National Congress, saying that it would stir voluntarism. What do you make of it?
The problem is that when these concerns are being raised by certain people within the ANC, they are being interpreted by others as a way to muscle out others. They're being seen as factional on their own. Like when you have a concern that the ANC's support within the metros is declining, people are saying within the ANC that, wait a minute, now you're saying that President Jacob Zuma is not doing a good job. So the problem is you have a very stifled environment where there is no trust, where members of the ANC can have an open, robust debate about these issues. Had they allowed themselves to have that kind of a debate, maybe they wouldn't be where they are. They could have undergone corrective measures to make sure that they do not lose so many key municipalities within such a short space of time.
Now, I want us to speak a little bit about the corrective measures that you're speaking, but obviously, as you're saying, you keep alluding to this 2017 and this elective conference as well, and the need to self-correct. Therefore, coming the elective conference, so what is the environment like? And obviously, from a political analyst, but I also want your ear in this. What is the talk on the ground, especially regarding the elective conference? Because there's also issues around the various entities, including the Premier of Mpumalanga wanting to have a deputy presidentship coming the elective conference. So tell us about that.
Well, people have been at work. The so-called Premier League seems to be scoring victories going into this elective conference. Apparently, they do have an influence, or they've had an influence on the election of the ANC Youth League and also the Women's League going forth. So this looks like it might just be another repeat of Polokwane conference. And as to whether that becomes the truth or reality, it depends on exactly what they're going to do. Mr. Mantashe talks about ending factionalism and all that. The issue is, are they willing to really commit to that and live with the consequences of ending those factions? Or are they just going to talk over them and then go to the conference the same way 2016? South Africans have seen what factionalism has done to the ANC. The opposition parties are so crafty. They're using it very well to a point where I think that the ANC at some point, if it's not careful, it will reach a point of no return.
Let's speak about these corrective measures. They're talking about addressing issues around state-owned enterprises. So you've got SAA, SABC has been mentioned, Eskom has been mentioned as well in terms of how do you deal with the various parastatals. Also looking at reprioritizing the budget, tackling unemployment as well as poverty. Youth empowerment has now become top of mind once again. Are they able to self-correct before 2019 when we have to go to the polls once again for the national elections?
You know, I've heard the ANC talk a few times. When they talk about reprioritizing the budget to tackle those issues, my assumption has been that that is what the budget was meant for all along. What is it that they're going to do differently now? And I'm afraid that the party here might delve into populist rhetoric instead of focusing on the substance. The issue for me, for the ANC, it's not about the ANC trying to build something to get them to the moon. It's just to avoid scandals. Think own goals, such as we've seen within Gandla, dragging everyone, including Parliament, in, and the questions of corruption and all. It's just to stay away from those. It doesn't mean that they have to give us a double-digit economic growth within the next 2 years or so. That's impossible. No one should hold them to that. But just cut out on the scandals. Don't have unnecessary scandals, because the reason why you are declining in metros is because the readers in metros, people who watch television, people who read a lot in metros, take this information very seriously, and it is upon that information that the ANC has been assessed in the past elections.
Speaking about assessment, when you're looking at exactly the coalition talks that are currently underway, I mean, obviously the deadline is looming for the coalition parties actually to start forming, so the governance can start happening, especially in those hung metros, so to say. So what is the situation looking like, especially for the African National Congress? Could it be possible that they would lose governing power in some of those metros, especially look at the EFF putting aside or forward its little own wish list, if you want us to govern alongside you?
Well, it's a difficult one for the ANC. I mean, one election you have got a resounding majority. The next election you can't. You've got to learn to say please. I mean, please come and govern.
You've gone from governing to help us.
Exactly. And I think that is quite a texting on the policy. I mean, on the ANC, you see even the way they are giving the press conference, non-committal as to where they are going. Clearly, I think the party can't even take a wider position regarding this this coalition. It still looks very much about testing the waters here and there.
So does
Even
that mean that
EFF
the DA and the EFF are likely to form a more solid coalition as opposed to the ANC and the EFF?
I think the EFF is in a position to assess which package works better.
Yeah.
My sense is that these coalition talks are going to end up with a package coalition, like, 5 municipalities, take 2, let's give us 1 or so. I don't think there
Isn't
will
that
be...
called minority governance?
Well, that's what they're going to try to do, because
Yeah.
the reality is that none of those political parties have an outright majority, so they've got to work with what they have.
Well, looking about working with what they have, it appears as though the African Independent Congress, and this is a question I must ask you before we leave as well, has gained strength and has found a voice, right? So what they're doing right now is that it wants Mathegka to relocate to KwaZulu-Natal from the Eastern Cape. How feasible is that? Because it appears that the African Independent Congress is really making strides and it's really making itself known.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think that, these opposition parties, some of them that nobody knew about, to be honest with you, about the AIC, they've got graphic design there that looks like that of the ANC.
But
I don't want to say that's why.
They did approach the ANC, and the ANC looked at the graphics and looked at the part and said, it's okay.
I think if you ask the ANC now, they might change their mind about how they feel about it. But I think that they're just making this demand, and they will have to soften up.
Yeah.
You cannot go into coalition with the same demands or maybe policy goals as you would have implemented had you won. They need to realize, all of them, that they haven't won anything. So it's time to say, please, time to be reasonable and to tone down on some of those demands so that you can get into something that can work.
Well, Ralph, thank you so much for joining us this morning, taking us through exactly what transpired in your weekend in news, speaking to independent political analyst there, Ralph Mathegka, and looking at exactly what transpired over this weekend as the conversations around coalitions continue. Time now, though, to enjoy a musical performance. We've got K-Boy standing by to give us some sounds, so do enjoy.